Well, hello, everybody. Tara Bachland here with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism and also Tara Bachland's channel as well. And I'm here with another Becoming an Herbalist guest, Abrah Arneson. And so happy to share another, just even the bit that I've read, it sounds like this is going to be a great talk. So many of our herbalist journeys begin with their own personal journey of healing. And so I'm very glad to be here with Abrah Arneson, who I've heard wonderful things about. Those of you who join us for classes at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism likely know of Alberto Carbo. And Alberto took Abrah's apprentice program. You have is a 1 through 3. So he took it all the way through. So quite an extensive program. So before I get to talking, welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Abrah.
Oh, thank you, Tara. Thank you for inviting me. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk about how to become a herbalist, because we need more.
We do. And I've often mentioned, well, I'm not the first to coin this. What's his name? The Qigong master who has some kind of phrase that, if we had a healer in every family,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would just really change the world, wouldn't it?
Well, I think there probably is a healer in every family. It's whether that person receives the support to develop their talents or their gifts,
So what, well, gosh, that's already a path that we can go down. I wanted to ask, well, maybe we'll go there. What would be the kind of support that someone could give or receive?
Well, I personally, from my point of view, right? I think healers see the world in a different way, and it's hard to really embrace seeing the world in a different way, whether one is more attuned to sorrow or more attuned to beauty, or has a gift with color, or suddenly understands how plants are talking, and to allow those kind of gifts to flourish in people, or have a fascination with stars, allow those gifts to flourish in people, and support them, as opposed to kind of like, oh, well, you better go become an engineer, because then you're going to make lots of money and you'll be nice and safe. That kind of, yeah, the quirkiness side of life. That's where I think you find the healer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some truth in that. It's kind of funny as we meet people in the herbal community, you meet your long lost friends, right? And you get each other.
Yeah. I called it the tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking her to share her story here, but on her beautiful website, where you'll find her at abraherbs.com. That's ABRA herbs.com. She offers heart-centered approach to the healing journey, and she uses talk, touch, and herbal medicine to offer you a holistic approach to healing, and then offers a breadth and depth of her experience as an herbalist and healer in a co-creative and caring atmosphere. Well, that sounds lovely if you're coming in for a consultation, especially. And you don't get into details, which I would love to get into. You say on your bio that your personal journey began with a life-threatening illness, that you found yourself on life support for 6 weeks in an intensive care unit, and that this experience was your first step in your education towards holistic plant-based medicine.
Yeah.
Please share. I mean, wow.
Well, it kind of started before that. Like I grew up in the suburbs in Toronto, learned how to walk on cement sidewalks straight, don't walk on the grass kind of thing. But there was always like a draw to plants, and had no capacity to understand, like no introduction to herbal medicine at all. And I first ran into herbal medicine in France when I was 19 with the tisanes. Anyways, so what happened to me was I spent a year traveling in Southeast Asia, picked up malaria in Vietnam, not a great place to get sick, and anyways, ended up like basically angels supported me, and this cyclo driver, they're the guys with the bicycles, and you sit in the seats in the back. He had a great love of Canadians, and he found out that I was Canadian. So he was always offering to take me places and everything. And then I got sick. And he found out I was in the hospital, and he sent these two Canadian guys, or Vietnamese people who had been refugees, and they were trying to set up an import-export. Anyways, these guys got me to Singapore, where I had proper medical care, amazing medical care. My doctor was an infectious disease specialist, and he said he pumped more antibiotics in my body than any other body.
Wow.
So I totally get. I'm here because of our industrial medical complex, which is what I refer to it as. But I got out of hospital. I weighed 85 pounds. Took the plane back to Vancouver, and nothing. And I went to. So where do you go? You go to the health food store, right? And I had like no money. I had maybe $200, and a friend of mine had found me a house sitting job. And I was like, looking after someone's house, their cats basically. And I had like $200, totally sick and weak. And I went to the health food store, and next thing there's like, a mountain of bottles on the counter, and she's telling me it's $800. And this woman was very concerned about my well-being, extremely kind, but the tools she had were limited. And so I went down to the beach and sat on the beach and just thought, there must be medicine for where I'm at that doesn't cost me $800. And so that was kind of like the journey. That was like, and to this day with my plant medicine, like I'll say no to nobody around money, because it's just, I have that philosophy in my practice.
So how long ago was this approximately?
Oh, this was a long time ago. I was just a spring chicken, which is probably one of the reasons why I survived that. I was like 24, maybe 23, 24. Actually, it's right around this time that I got out of hospital. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting when you have occurrences like that, how those times of the year, some parts of you remember.
Yeah, it is interesting. And the funny thing is, this morning I had a client with dengue fever.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, dengue fever, like Ottawa? Like,
how did they get dengue fever?
At the DR. Yeah. And she Dominican Republic, and she just got out of hospital like 3 days ago. So anyways,
it is easy. I've traveled through parts of South America as well. It's easy growing up in Northern America to take for granted the things that we don't have to be worried about. Now we do have some kind of, Lyme's disease has certainly become prevalent. That seems kind of like a North America equivalent to some of these, doesn't it?
Yeah, in some ways, but I think that treatment with Lyme disease is so rudimentary. Like, malaria, they can wipe that out of the body pretty fast given the right drugs. And she's on like really high dose antibiotics right now. And I don't know if the antibiotics are actually going to kill the dengue, but I'm not a dengue fever specialist. So.
Yeah. Well, at the risk of going off on too many tangents right now, so share with us the progression from, having malaria coming back to Canada, and how did that progress?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I went to Southeast Asia was I was very curious about Buddhism. So I was sitting in, I sat at some meditation centers, but then I didn't like these guys telling me how I could dress all the time. I'm a little rebellious for that kind of cloistered life. So anyways, I was just traveling, doing stuff. And then I came back, and it was like I needed somewhere to recover. And a friend of mine told me, hey, there's this job at a meditation center in Ontario. You should go apply for it. You'd love it. It's the perfect situation. So I ended up going up there, And I basically lived there for 10 years. And it's on 400 acres with crown land. We have crown land around us, which basically means it's owned by the crown. And people have access to it, but it's usually fairly remote. So I ended up living up there for quite a while, for 10 years, with my teacher and doing all sorts of different types of practices and meditating. And kept like taking herb courses, but I'd get, this is the 90s and there wasn't that much out there. And I'd get, like, I remember this one course taking it, and it was like just a bunch of loose papers with lists and lists of actions that I was supposed to memorize. And I was like, oh, this isn't what I'm looking for. And then I met, I had got, my mom's in Toronto, so I went to Toronto, and there was a herb thing going on around the corner from her place. So I signed up and went, and there was a native woman, Anishinaabe, and her name is Jan Longboat. She's a very well-respected herbalist in that tradition in this area. And so she was talking about plants and getting your song and finding your song and all that. And I'm like, oh, I want my song, right? So I ended up going, and she really inspired me with plants. And she's keeps her medicine very close, Jan Longboat does, but she like really inspired me. And what I was so interested, because I love ritual, and I was so interested in the ritual of healing and using plants. So I went back up to the center and carried on with my practice, and then I met to the center came a Sami shaman, and we spent 2 summers together. So then he gave me his song, and he was showing me how to like make these musical instruments with plants and all this. So anyways, I had this whole thing with my friend Ilo. His name was Ilo. And so in the meantime, I met my husband. And so my teacher eventually said to me, okay, Abrah, you're finished, time to go. So it was like, I had received what I needed to receive. So my husband and I had a friend who had a cabin in the Yukon, and we decided to go up and do a year's meditation retreat in the Yukon. So we go up to the Yukon, and in this little cabin in the meadow surrounded by mountains. It's about an hour and a half walk to the Alaskan Highway. You walk on this old road that the Americans actually made because they were concerned about a Japanese invasion coming down through that area. So this access is this old dirt road. So anyways, we end up in this little cabin, and we spent a year there. And I just remember sitting in this meadow of flax flowers thinking, I need to develop some kind of skill for the world, that I can interact with the world, because I'd been living a fairly cloistered life. And I decided, oh, I'm going to become a herbalist. So the next time we hitchhiked into Whitehorse, I got online. There was the Wild Rose College program, and there was Dominion Herbal College. And Dominion looked like a very heavy science-based program, which it is. And I thought, oh, I spent so much time exploring, the intuitive, the kind of like open spaciousness of consciousness, whatever, interacting with nature on that level. I need to develop more of an analytical skill set. So yeah, we came out of the Yukon. Again, we had no money, and a friend of mine gave me some money to take a quick course in how to be a nursing attendant, which sort of sent me to work in hospice while I was in herb school. And when I graduated from herb school, I set up my practice, and it's been a crazy ride. Like crazy ride, but it's like I don't know what else one would do with one's life,
So it sounds like the meditation guided you, helped you to see. Did you have like a clear vision, like, I'm going to come out of this being an herbalist, set it, put my shingle up, or did you guys just feel like, I've got to study herbalism and I'll see what develops from there?
Yeah, no, I just kept being called to it. But then it was always like, oh, there's another retreat, or let's go to Spain, or like, there was always something else. And then my teacher basically said, okay, you're done. Like, go. Like, you got to go back to the world now. Like, you've got, like, I've put enough in you. You let the world be your teacher now. And yeah, sort of got kicked out and
What a
thrown out
teacher.
of, thrown out of the nest.
Yes, that's exactly what came to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyways, quick retreat to the Yukon. No.
I'm
And
not
then,
ready, right?
yeah, like, oh my God, let's retreat to the Yukon. Yeah. How far away can I get from this? And then, yeah. And the Yukon's pretty far away. Like, yeah.
That's quite remote. It sounds like, well, it was an hour and a half walk.
Yeah, to the highway.
Okay, wow. So many questions. So I can imagine, even for myself, in a lot of ways. I mean, I have a public presence. I do all this, but I'm innately an introvert. Like
Yeah.
I love, my reading time or cooking or cuddling with my kitty who's taking a nap right here. But there is a sense sometimes where you feel like you have to kind of come out of that shell. How did you, and you lived, like you said, a cloistered life for a decade. I mean, that's a shift. What were some of what were some of the things that helped you to come into the world and share your gifts?
Well, my relationship with my partner, for sure, like, he's an amazing support person for me, and just, and we have a very close relationship, and really help keep each other on track, about what our inner values are. So establishing the inner values, doing the nursing work was pretty intense, and big wake up call as well. And yeah, so I think the big problem was for me is, like, when you live in that kind of community for a long time, it's everybody sort of shares a common belief system, and there's a language that supports that belief system that you use, and you get badges, oh, I did this, and I've done this, and so there's identity built up in that, and then you walk into the world, and, like, they don't care how many mantras you've done, they don't care that you met this great teacher, or that you did this and that. Like, no one cares about it. And I think that was a really powerful experience, because it's like it makes one bring their spiritual life in totally inside themselves, as opposed to relying on external circumstances to create an environment for spiritual life. And so, like, I have a strong affinity for Buddhism. I don't consider myself a Buddhist for many reasons, but basically, what it means to be a Buddhist is that my sense of reality is defined through my heart. My inner reality defines my external reality, and not the other way around. And so, coming back into the world in this really unusual situation, all of a sudden I was surrounded in a very powerful Christian community, and a lot of the nurses, and, like, they were beautiful human beings doing really deep work to take care of other people in a good way. And so that was a really transformative time for me, and important, to let go of that identity of, oh, I'm this person who's done this.
It's almost like I have questions, but it's almost like I'd love to witness that in a movie, because it's almost like, what would this look like? A person who, like you said, your spirituality is identified by your environment, and then you go into another environment. I imagine it was like culture shock.
Yeah, but also, yeah, in many ways, culture shock, and, like, in many ways. But I'd also, I had a lot of practice of, like, doing retreat work, cooking. I cooked for hundreds of meditators, so it's like my practice was very much in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out constantly. It was more like the group think that was the part that was hard to step outside of this group. It's hard to describe. It's like a group thing.
So you would already well establish your own values and sense of
Yeah.
being. And so otherwise I can imagine that would be extremely difficult if your identity was based on the group think,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I imagine that nursing work, how long did you do the nursing work?
I did it throughout my school. I took 5 years to do the 4-year program because I just needed to shop one year. I had like no money and I just wanted to buy a really great pair of boots. And, I just wanted to shop. All my money was going in school and I was like, no, I want to shop. So anyways, so I took 5 years and then it took me 2 years to get my practice to a place where I didn't need to do extra work somewhere else. So about 7 years I worked in hospice care.
I imagine that contributed a great deal to your experience to being an herbalist.
Yeah. Well, I work very rarely with dying people as a herbalist. And I think that I've made a conscious decision about, like, I want to work with people who are, moving into their futures.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the older I get, the more I want to work with people who are moving into the future.
Right.
So,
But even being present with someone, Alberto and I were discussing the other day about what are some challenges that new herbalists go through, and the topic of learning to be present
yeah.
came up. I imagine working in hospice, you got that skill down.
Yeah, well, yeah. I remember this one little old lady, all rickety, and I was working a lot of nights, and night shift is, has its challenges. So I'm going and I'm in the room with another person, and we go to touch her and she just gets really stiff, right? And I'm like, oh, it's hard to move someone around when they're really, and 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 the pain is, the possibility of a breakthrough pain is greater, right? If you're relaxed, it's easier. So I said to her, just relax. And she said, you just relax. And ever since then, I've been like, oh, yeah, right. Like, don't tell people to relax. There's all these little things, right?
Yeah.
And and I have all my favorite death stories. I tell people my death stories. I think they're therapeutic,
Yeah. That I can imagine that, that they would be. I almost am tempted to ask you for one, but we're on a roll here. Also, about the herbalist path, right?
Yeah, the herbalist path.
Right. So, you come out of herb school. You take 5 years. I bet you remember that pair of boots that you got, like what they looked like.
Green embroidered roses on them. Yeah, they were
nice.
Yeah.
And so you set up shop, and you say it takes a couple of years to get that going to be a full-time practicing herbalist.
Yeah.
How did you start gaining clients?
Well, that was an interesting journey because I kind of got really lucky. I was in a small city. I was in Western Canada, and in a small city, and I reached out to the local newspaper, and it was a small city where there was a large rural population that would come into this small city to do all their chores. So I reached out to the local newspaper and said, hey, I'm a new business. You might want to do a story on me. So he did. He came and he sat and did a story on me, which was great. So I had this full spread. And then I'm like, oh, I could write a column for you. So for like 10 years, I wrote a bi-weekly column for this little newspaper. And I think that was a big piece of it. And also teaching, of course, workshops, lots and lots of workshops, every month workshops, or things where a series of workshops, or like working in the herb garden, or like just workshops. And then that newspaper article. Yeah. That was a really lucky thing that happened.
Well, it sounds lucky, but also sounds like you stuck your neck out there and you're like, hey, this would be a good idea, and kind of that suggestive selling. Also, as an entrepreneur, you got to have some savvy.
Yeah, and you don't want to spend tons of money on marketing, right? Like you can't, like you don't want you like it's like you could spend a fortune on radio or whatever, but I had this like print ad
Hmm.
column and then it sort of like there was a little magazine that was like, oh, we really like your column in the newspaper. So it kind of grew a little bit, which was great. Yeah, and then the workshops, lots of workshops, talking to as many people I could get in front of.
So was this sometimes rural communities, they're really open to, I find herbalism because it's just kind of a part of their being. Like it was sort of like, like my grandma would say, take an Epsom salt bath, even though it's not herbs, but
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
natural.
yeah.
Or sometimes they're the other way around. Did they take some warming up?
I think it was both.
Mm.
You still get that, wow, no matter where you are, you go, oh, I'm a herbalist, and people just kind of look at you weird, like,
Hmm.
what's that supposed to mean?
You eat
And,
salads all the time?
pardon me?
You eat salads all the time?
Yeah, you eat salads all the time. And what kind of herb?
Yeah.
And in Canada, it's like, oh yeah, that herb. Yeah, so, yeah, but it was kind of both. Yeah, and plus I'd had all that nursing time in this community, so I
Mhm.
also had met a lot of people in that and had a sense of the community, how to talk to them, right?
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, so the workshops, were they ever an additional income source, or were they initially, yeah? What kind of topics would you teach on? What were good topics?
Mm, well, the old making the cream is a big one, right? Messy to do, but a lot of people like to learn how to make creams. I don't know, making teas, during flu season, herbal medicine for flus, all sorts. Like, yeah, I like you name it, I have taught it pretty much.
Mhm.
Like, um, God, skincare, a lot of skincare, a lot of products, making little products. People love that. And then I sometimes I would also bring people in to teach things. That always is a good thing to do to broaden the community. Doing flower essence, making flower essences, herbal medicine for pain, sometimes more clinical stuff, herbal medicine for pain, herbal medicine for migraines, things like that. Yeah, all sorts of them.
So you would get your marketing in and have a payday. Sounds like.
Yeah. And not like I'm not charging like $100, like it's maybe like $20 for the workshop, right? But it covers the time for writing it and for um, preparing it and teaching it, right? And then you have that workshop. So then if someone says, oh, will you come and do a workshop in our community? You go, sure, here's what I have. And then, yeah,
Mhm.
workshops are the way to go. And now we can be back in person, and I'm just dying to do more in person stuff.
Mhm. That's another thing. So we'll have another series. We'll be talking about events, and I hear you have an event that you're putting on
Yeah,
shortly. So when we review your website at the end, let's talk a little bit too about your upcoming event as well, because I
yeah.
think
We,
a
we've got
lot of
virtual.
people are just itching to do
Oh
something.
yeah, and herb events are so much fun. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So how did it? So now you are still practicing clinical herbalist, but you also run an apprenticeship program as well. You're uh,
yeah.
an author. So how did those things develop along the way?
Well, I set up the Green Clinic. That's what I called my business initially, the Green Clinic. And 3 weeks later, people are asking me for an apprenticeship, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Like, are you joking? Like, I just graduated, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, whoa. And so people just kept asking me. So eventually, I thought, okay, well, I can start setting something up. So it was very like I look back and I'm going, oh my god, Abrah, like you think you can do anything, like that was insane. And now it's like, yeah. So over the years, it's developed into where it's at right now, and it's a pretty intense program I run. I would say it's intense, but
So
I'm an intense person, so
well, and that's the beauty, you look out there. Sometimes I used to wonder, gosh, why are there so many vehicles? Why are there so many types of clothing? Why are there so many types of this and that? Well, we are also individual, and we gravitate, or,
Yeah.
classes, right? Schools to go to. Well, we're individuals. We have certain personalities, and we gravitate towards certain personalities.
Yeah. 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 So at this point in my career, I'm really, really interested in creating clinical herbalists. That's what I'm like I hope to practice for many more years, but I really want to develop that clinical herbalist. So I'm not really doing too many like skincare workshops, or
Mhm.
I might do a few work herb walks, that kind of stuff, or like have people come to my garden because I like to talk about my garden. But
Mhm.
really, it's like this is what I'm doing now. I'm like making clinical herbalists.
Well, that seems to be the evolution of any practitioner or teacher, right? That not always, but it's pretty standard. You develop your own practice, and eventually you're teaching. I see it in my husband, for example. We both run and own businesses, and he's often in the teaching realm. Or Matthew Wood, for example, he is just he's not teaching the beginner classes so much. He's always just he's at a different stage, and then what a gift. I mean, to be able
Yeah,
to essentially raise up the next generation of herbalists.
yeah, exactly. And Matthew's work is so important. Like his work influenced me. Like when I graduated, that was the first thing I read all his books, and they're all on the reading list in the programs I have right now. And that's yeah, yeah, it's important work. He's
Mhm.
done very important work in the world
Absolutely.
of herbal medicine.
So we work closely with him, and he writes every day. He said, if I just got to write in the morning, that sets my day. It's like his workout. Some people need their workout, some people need their coffee, and we've literally brought his computer into the Apple store and had keyboards replaced because he's typing. He types so much.
Wow.
And thank God for his talent and ability to do that. To me, it's absolutely amazing how people's gifts come together
Yeah.
and then gift other people.
Yeah. Especially when the gifts are supported, which goes right back to there's a healer in every family, right? The gifts
Mhm.
supported them.
Well, that reminds me too, I've noticed in your email signature, you have a quote by Rumi, and maybe you can share with us a little bit what it means to you.
Beauty. Well, let the beauty be what you do. Let your
Let the beauty we love be what we do.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think about beauty, like beauty's a big medicine for me in my life. And I okay, I'm going to tell you something fairly personal. And I I've always had a problem with the idea of God, And my husband and I have been doing this exploration of a writer who has a very deep Christian orientation. And I was listening to a podcast she was doing, and Robertson, Margaret Robertson, I think her name is, and she was talking about beauty. God is beauty, and that you know every moment we miss beauty, we don't recognize the beauty in the moment. Beauty always forgives us. It's always available to us in the next moment, no matter how often I miss the beauty in someone, or the beauty in the landscape, or I'm looking at something terrible going on in the world, and there's still the beauty of my mutt, my old dog there, and so it's like it's always with us, and it always forgives us when we haven't recognized it, and returns to us, and so that's kind of become my new sense of God, beauty.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really important to me.
Yeah, I could see that it's being synonymous in a way with God, in the sense that you're present more with it when you have to be present.
Yeah,
You recognize it when you take the moment to be present and be with it,
yeah,
both.
and it's everywhere. Even in the most terrible situations, it's still
Mhm.
present.
And similarly, or to continue that you are received the, in God terms, we would use grace, right?
Yeah.
Like gifts that you receive, where with beauty, you also receive a sort of grace by being present and just witnessing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from a meditator's point of view, the practice of loving kindness, there in meditation, there's always like the seed, which is the intention, and then the actual practice is like the plant. And then the results of the practice is the fruit. So they say the fruit of loving kindness meditation is boundless beauty. So one can start recognizing beauty to establish a heart of loving kindness. And there's this relationship between the outer and inner. It's so lovely, you know. So
Mhm.
that's like really important to me because sometimes, when you're working with sick people for a long time and it just feels like, you're syphilis pushing this rock up this hill and, trying to be a herbalist in a world that doesn't understand what herbal medicine is. It can be really hard. So,
Right.
that sense of, oh, I'm surrounded in beauty. Thank you.
Mhm. How did you, maybe it's a good time to ask, how did you, I assume like those 2 years starting your practice, or there were other times maybe especially during the COVID era, everybody went through challenges, you know, it's we're speaking spiritually here, but how did that, were there any mentalities and any thoughts or maybe even mantras that helped you get through? Because especially as people consider, a lot of people work for a living, right? To get a
Yeah,
paycheck. And they will be called to herbalism, but then just the thought of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be working for myself.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's scary.
terrifying.
Yeah, it's not easy, and yeah, there's not really a net. We don't really have nets herbalists other than for nature loves herbalists. And I al- I always tell people the plants are going to support you. Don't worry about it. As long as you're good stewardship with the plants, you're good relationship with the plants. They're going to support you because plants love herbalists, and they're power on this planet. Plants, so they'll support you no matter what. Maybe you won't have like, the Mercedes or anything like that, but my car works. My car's good. It's, like I don't worry about my car, And yeah, sorry, what I kind of went off on a
Yeah. So during some of those tough
Oh
times,
yeah, yeah. Really, it's back to nature and beauty always. That's it. Like boom, that's my touchstone. And I live in a beautiful place. I have found a beautiful place to live in, and that's really helpful. And I have I I have close relationships with several family members, so that's really important. And I have very close friends as well. So yeah, I have a support structure that I'm not a herbalist in. Like sometimes it's like people like don't put the herbalist on as an identity either, right? Like you need to have a life beyond being a herbalist. Like like it's my job, and and people go, oh, it's more than a job, and I'm like, yeah, but I also just have to be the person doing my groceries and or the person who's, just having a cup of tea on the deck and not always be a herbalist. But I really think the key to being a successful herbalist is letting the plants support you and really listening deeply. Like, what is the next step here? Where do I have to go? Yeah, I think the plants are the key to success. And it's magic.
it sounds like we're speaking about beauty. It's the presence. I assume, is it the presence with them? Being present and saying, I'm trying to work with you here, or I'm
Yeah.
putting words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. Okay, so one time, right? It's about like I'm about a year and a half into practice, right? And I'm like, and like it was a very theoretical education I had. So, starting to put plants in people's bodies, a whole nother thing. And, I'm reading Matthew, trying to understand energetics and the history of herbal medicine from a different point of view. And like, I'm trying to put it all together. I've got this side job working, in hospice care and uh, trying to get out of night shifts, and like it was a hard time. Okay, again, like student debt, not a lot of money, and it's March, and it's not particularly beautiful out. Everything's brown and dusty and wet and muddy, and like it's March.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting at a traffic light in my old beat up car. This is before I had my nice little car now. My old beat up car, I'm sitting there at a traffic light thinking, and there's like a Canadian Tire on one corner, a Walmart on another corner, a Tim Hortons on, it's just this really like parking lots and cars. And I'm sitting at the traffic light, longest traffic light in the world. And I'm like, I can't do this. This is too hard. I cannot do this. And all of a sudden, this dusty little juniper bush trying to grow in this little garden on the side, by the traffic light, goes, "Don't worry, Abrah. Keep going. We'll help you."
And
like they'll help you. They got your back.
That's something I kind of laugh inside, because that herbalists will get that, right?
Yeah,
People get that.
Yeah, her herbalists will get that totally. It's like, yeah, this dusty, scrawny, dog pee, garbage, old coffee cups, ATM slips, juniper bush, prickly.
So it sounds like you've also bestowed upon your students some really good wisdom and advice. I've heard a few tips that you've given through Alberto, who works with us. And one of them, just specifically, he's setting up his practice. And we're like thrilled that he applied to work with us here at the Institute. And he said, well, yeah, my teacher said, while you're setting up your practice, make sure to, have a job on the side and build up your practice. Are there any other nuggets that you would be willing to share with people who are looking either in the switch or looking to make the switch?
Yeah. I think a lot of stay away from the sexy herbs.
What would be a sexy?
Well, I don't know. I don't really use them. I have my tried and true, stay bioregional as much as possible.
Okay.
Don't get drawn into, the Amazon, the Himalayas. Just stay really bioregional as much as possible. I do use herbs from other continents, but try to be, because it's, you don't need to have 500 herbs in your apothecary. If you have 50 herbs that you work with day in, day out, and you know them really well, that's all you need. It may be a couple of extras for when you have unusual situations like dengue fever come in. But really, you just need that really tight apothecary to work from. And just stay away from, don't get drawn into the hype about plants. Know your burdock. Know everything your burdock can do. It's a great plant. It's simple, but it's complex. Or calendula. These are fabulous plants. And they're inexpensive. They're accessible. You can go out and dig up your burdock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would have been glad for you to dig them up.
Exactly. Yeah. My neighbor was like, "Oh, I saw you looking at my burdock." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, yeah, he's into surveillance. He's got all his cameras up. So he watches me go and look at his weeds. And comes like, "Oh, you want that weed?" Oh, sure.
Sounds like you make great neighbors.
Yeah, well, it's a funny community. Yeah. It's a good, yeah. He works in he does surveillance. There's a lot of government workers where I live, because Ottawa's the capital city. So yeah, he works in terrorist surveillance or something like this. So he's serious into surveillance, right?
Yeah. It sounds like it's the right job for him.
Yeah. So he surveils me checking out his burdock.
So how did your books come along?
Oh, my books. Yeah. So, the Herbal Apprentice came right out of The Apprentice, because I was photocopying all these papers all the time. So I just decided, oh no, this is going to be a book. And then the workbook kind of came along. Oh yeah, these are the homework assignments that go with the book. So that's basically the year one. And then I didn't really do a lot. Wrote a lot of poetry for a few years, and then I was really interested in. I'm really interested in the female voice in herbal medicine. Um, at the historical female voice in herbal medicine is really hard to find, and so, and yeah, those books are big, like the vessel and the weaving, and I have another one that's going to be out very soon called the Wellspring. I'm calling them the Grandmother series, and they came out of a time where I was doing a lot of work with First Nations, and I was sitting in a lot of sweat lodges, in a woman's sweat lodge a lot, and the elder said, this beautiful woman named Corky Johannesson, beautiful woman, she says, oh, your grandmothers just want you to be happy. And I thought, oh, come on, Corky, you must have more than that, right? And but I trust her, and she's one of the most kind-hearted people I know. And so that's where the weaving, the vessel, and then the wellspring came from. Like, what does that mean? My grandmothers just want me to be happy. And of course, because I work with plants, the plants are a big thing. And I was like looking for those stories of women in plant medicine. So. But it's definitely, yeah, men should know the story too, as should people who do not identify as male or female. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the vessel, women, plants, and contraception, that's unique information. I mean, that's hard to find reliable information. How did that come about?
It's really a dream, because I'm kind of a bacteria geek. I have all these ideas about bacteria, and so I keep wanting to write about bacteria. So I was trying to write, but my writing was too stiff. It was like I was trying to be something I wasn't. In my, you have to be very sincere in your writing for it to be true, and I could feel I was trying to do something that wasn't right. And so then I had a dream of a conveyor belt with a pink box wrapped in pink paper, and I'm like, I'm drinking my coffee in the morning thinking, well, I don't know what that dream is about. And then that week I had 3 people ask me about contraception, and while I was talking to the third woman, I was like, whoa, that's what that dream is about. I better unpack that box. And I wrote that book fast. Yeah. And it's hard to find that information in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the teachers with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, Phyllis D. Light, she said this publicly before, so I don't think I'm saying anything I shouldn't, but she's like, she has 5 kids. She's like, I would have had a lot more if it wasn't for, because people ask her, do herbs work for contraception? And of course, there's a big asterisk, study them, right?
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, I would have a few more kids if it weren't for herbal
medicine. And know how your body works too, right? Like you have, and I am really strong on that, beyond an app, right? Know how you're cycling beyond an app, right? Because your body is not an app. And so that language, really embody your knowledge of how your body works. And then you can track with your herbs. That's yeah. But it really when we're using what's his name? Sorry. I use that book so much in writing that book. Anyways, there's a book on a historian wrote about herbs and contraception. I can't remember his name. Anyways, he's looked at all the data from the demographics of different societies.
We must have used them around the world at some point. Had to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so would you say that your journey has been planned out, or is a lot of it, sensing and then stepping forward? Because
Sensing and stepping forward.
okay, that's what I sensed because so many of us grow up in an environment where it's you need to plan 4 years ahead, or next step is, exams in college and
Yeah.
getting married, and it's like it's laid out. But I think when you hear anyone's quote success story, and I think success is subjective, right? Is you're happy with your life and
Mhm.
hopefully in your own self.
Mm.
Uh, Oftentimes, or if not always, it's that kind of journey where it's not necessarily planned out, it's a feeling and then taking a step forward.
Yeah.
Would you agree to that?
Yeah, totally. And that was a big lesson for me, like in my early days as practice, because all of a sudden one day it was just like, wait a second, I just have to let my life come to me. I don't have to go out and chase down my life. Like my life is going to come to me. And
Mhm.
yeah, that was a big lesson. So whenever I feel like I'm going to go chase something, I'm like, oh no, because then I'm going to miss all the opportunities that are actually just coming
Mm.
and showing up, whether it's an opportunity just to like look at the clouds for a little bit, or oh, look at my neighbor's burdock, it's perfect right now. Right? Or here I am on this lovely podcast, like,
Yeah. Witness the beauty.
yeah, and allow it to come to you, let the plants do their work on you, right?
What's so interesting is I've in my own journey, and I haven't shared a lot about my own journey, but it was similar in a way where I knew I wanted to work in natural health and wellness, but it was like I kept like people were like, why don't you do that? And I'd be like, oh no, why don't you do that? And I felt like I was like the princess and the pea or something, like, no, that's not
Yeah,
quite right,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
had to come to me in a way. I was
yeah,
seeking for sure. And it did happen in a way where we met Matt maybe about a little over a decade ago at an herb walk. And my husband, John, we were out on the herb walk, and my husband asked Matt, he's like, I've been having low back pain for quite a while. What would you recommend for this? And Matt leans over to a plant, and my husband's done some interesting training in the past, including neurolinguistic programming or remote viewing. He's very much into a lot of people would call it woo-woo stuff, but we know that. And so he's like, as he witnessed Matt talking to the plant, he's like, wow, this guy, is something special. Not just he was talking, but he could sense that there's actually communication going on there, right?
yeah.
And Matt plucked one of the leaves of the goldenrod and said, here, chew on this. And my husband said, after you chewed on that, his lower back pain was gone for 3 years.
Wow.
Yes, and was a huge moment for him. And so, he says that he's worked with many amazing teachers and recognized Matthew as one of those amazing teachers. And he said, we're gonna work with this guy. And our there's some other details which I don't need to share now, but that was a part of my own process of like I couldn't have planned that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's just, oh yeah, let's go on this herb walk, and
Right.
oh, my life just changed.
Right. And
Yeah,
it was a progression. We didn't start building the website right away. We did some workshops with Matt. We had to get to know him. He had to get to know us better. And it was just an interesting, so I'm a person that tends to like to plan out, and you need those people in your life, right? That's like
yeah,
where, uh, but what has been really beautiful is while building this uh, online institute with Matt is he brings that element just because of who he is, of just like being in the moment and like, oh, let's try this. And just he seems to have like he's tuned in
yeah,
somewhere, because he'll come up with an idea and it's like, oh, that's a neat idea. And then we put it into action. It's like, wow, that was a really great idea. Where did that come from? And it's
yeah,
helped me to learn to go with the flow more as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, I don't. I do work with plans. Like I just bought a new notebook
Mm.
today for a new kind of adventure, and so that will be like. But I'm definitely loose with my plans.
Sorry, what was the last part?
I'm loose with my plans. Like I have plans, like,
Mhm.
oh, this is, yeah, I'd really like to do this, but I'm loose. Like I don't have, like, it doesn't have to be tight, right?
As far as, like, which ones you'll use or call on,
Yeah.
and that 50 number 50 could shift a little bit.
Yeah.
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 Well, that seems to be the case too. You'll talk to practitioners who are really tuned in, and your mind might say one thing, but you're like, I'm feeling something else,
Yeah.
and to go with that feeling,
Yeah. 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 And really start trusting it. That's like, I think that's the key to success in herbal medicine.
trusting that inner
Yeah.
inkling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And feeding it, like feed it lots of information, like read and study and grow plants and make medicine and observe, like feed it all that. Like it's
Mhm.
got to feed it, but at the same time, it's like boom, it's going to come.
You seem to me maybe a person that hasn't you keep feeding in helpful ways. I'm thinking of burnout. People in any kind of job or career can burn out. What would you recommend to, I mean, any age of herbalists, how long they've been in, to help keep that fire stoked just enough, right? Not to, I mean, there are times where you have to kind of put a little bit more in the fire, right, to
Yeah.
get going, but how to not burn out. Do you have any insights on that?
COVID was pretty tough for not burning out because like clinic was crazy busy, and so much time on Zoom. Like Zoom is just like, oh.
Mhm.
But yeah, again, it's just like I walk my dog, I talk to my mom. Like I have a life my outside of herbal medicine. Although herbal medicine is touching everything in my life. I write, I I track dreams, I meditate. So I think it's having, like, I think when we identify with what we do, like we think we are what we do, that's where we're more inclined to burn out because we want to be seen for what we do and not who we are. And
Mhm.
I think it's easier, and sometimes when you're just sitting having a cup of tea, just being who you are, it's very refreshing.
Mhm.
And herbs, right? Definitely take herbs every day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing, well, how long have you been doing events? You've been doing workshops since the beginning, right? But let's talk a little bit about the event that you have coming up. Sounds like quite a big one that you're putting on.
Yeah, well, Alberto, he got involved. So, well, I wanted to, like, yeah, so this is, I've helped organize a few events, but this is sort of like, okay, let's do this here. So I live in a really unique area. I live actually in Quebec. I'm in Ontario working right now because I'm an Anglophone, but I live in a Franco-Anglo community, and it's really interesting the interface between um, the French Canadian herbalists and the English speaking herbalists, and yeah, they have a slightly different take on things, and I really enjoy that. It's also very beautiful where we live. Anyway, so yeah, we're doing a friend of mine. She has a amazing herb garden, an amazing herb farm. So we're hosting the event at the herb farm, and we're doing. I'm really interested in ancestors, so like that goes back to the women's medicine. Like, where are the women's voices in herbal medicine? And so yeah, the theme is uh, medicine of our ancestors.
Mhm.
So we've tried to invite people from different kind of areas of the world to talk about their medicine.
That's a great idea. That sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, that's our theme this year. So it's pretty exciting. And yeah, so we have a number of, we have an Ayurvedic practitioner, and this guy, he went to Ayurvedic school for many years in India. And Alberto's going to talk about jungle medicine. He's Colombian and he has a lot of experience in the jungle in Colombia making medicine. So he's going to do jungle medicine. I can't wait. Let's see, number of First Nations people, a number of French Canadian people. Yeah, so it's going to be fun. Yeah.
That's neat. And it's a multiple day event this time, isn't it?
Yeah. So we have Friday night, and we're a river. There's some big rivers where we live, and there's a lot of activism right now to work with the rivers and keep the rivers clean and like protect the rivers, protect the water. So that's our opening talk is with a native man who's really active in protecting the rivers in this area. They would just do a fun sound thing. It's actually quite a moving sound thing, but yes, exploring sound, making sounds of nature.
Mm.
It's beautiful. And then the next day is like boom, workshops, right? Like I think it's four workshops per slot. So there's 4 slots, and then there's 4 workshops per slot. And then on the third day, on the Sunday, we're doing 3 intensives. We're running 3 intensives. One that's a little bit science based. That's me, bacteria, trying to get back into my bacteria. And my friend Stephen Martin, he's a very intuitive herbalist. So talking about like developing intuitive and herbal medicine. And then Alberto and another friend of ours, Tori, they're going to be doing more an introduction for folks, the beginners herbal medicine intensive. So yeah,
Wonderful.
but it's at this amazing herb farm, right? Like this is like Marianne's been making this herb farm. I don't know. I've known her for 10 years, and she was there long before. And she has like little hidden areas of American ginseng and like, golden seal in her woods. And
Wow.
not that, yeah, not that she's going to show people where they are, but it's like she's really like this woman.
That
Yeah.
sounds wonderful. What are the dates and where can people learn more?
The website is Utawe Herb Gathering. So Utawe is um, one of the old names for the Ottawa River, and it means traders of knowledge. So
Hmm.
Utawe, because it was part of the fur trade, and it was like, yeah, so they traded a lot of knowledge. So the Utawe to honor our rivers. Um, you're going to want me to spell that. Outae. Ouias. I can just, yeah, I don't spell.
Yeah.
Herb Gathering. And it's August, I think it's the second or third weekend. I could look this up really fast.
Just checking if it's on your events or learn.
It has its own site right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the 9th, 10th, and 11th
Of August, you said?
of August. The Outaouais Herb Gathering. Early bird tickets are on sale right now. And we want lots of vendors. So if you're like making stuff, as long as it's handmade, like if you're doing your own, like making little clay bowls for pestle and mortar, like please come. Like, yeah. Or if you're making beautiful herb products, great.
And where is that again?
It's okay, so it's about a 35-minute drive along the Ottawa River from Ottawa.
So
And
not
it's
too
in
bad.
a place called
I assume
No.
the airport is in Ottawa proper. Not is so
Yeah,
bad of a drive.
yeah, Ottawa. Yeah. And also if you're flying in and you need a ride, like reach out. Yeah. And yeah, so reach out and yeah, we can make things happen for people.
Wonderful. And I
And
assume you have that linked up with your
go
main
ahead.
website, abraherbs.com. I'm sure you'll have that linked up with your website too coming up.
Yeah, it should be linked up now actually, but I haven't looked.
Okay. Yeah, because I know Alberto said that the website was just finished the other day. So maybe just directing people to your site, abraherbs.com, and then they'll soon that probably get your newsletter. They'll
Yeah.
get information about it. Yeah, because that sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And it's a small gathering. Like we're only looking for like maybe 125 people. Like it's not like a massive event. We're looking for like a small, really close, fun event.
It sounds really nice. It sounds very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed this conversation, and I think it'll be fun to talk again too. I'd love to hear some of your stories or some more stories. And so maybe we'll have to arrange that again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. It's been lovely speaking with you.
It's been very lovely, and I've enjoyed the little jaunts off track that we took a few times.
Yeah.
You seem to have a wealth of things to offer in herbal health and wellness from your classes, books. You do also have some online classes, your upcoming events. I do encourage people to check out abrahherbs.com and see what you have to offer. It looks like your website is ABRA. Oh, I see the HERBS.
Yeah.
H is shared.
H is shared.
There we go. And yeah, it's been delightful, and I look forward to chatting again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for taking care of Alberto. I love him so much.
Oh, he takes care of himself wonderfully. We're just glad to have him on the team.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.